Welcome back once again to the Writer Brothers podcast. My name is Petey York, your host this evening. Today I am joined by my co-producer, Pollo Zapatos.
Pollo
And
Zapato.
today, huh?
Pollo
I'm,
Zapatos.
I'm going to say that and butcher it like a good American every single time I say it, but I'll get it eventually. It'll be our last episode. I'll finally say it right. Today, we are joined by our special guest this evening, Carrie Owen, Witch in Residence. Carrie Owen, why don't you go ahead and take a second, introduce yourself, and explain why you're here today?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Corion. I am YouTube's unofficial witch in residence. I typically am on various streams talking about pop culture and my take on it as a spiritualist, occultist, and generally purveyor of all things weird and strange. I was so graciously invited to the channel after these fine gentlemen managed to make it onto Doomcock's channel, and we got to talking. And yeah, they were gracious enough to invite me here, so I'm ready to go and ready to chat about just about anything.
All right. Well, first, that brings us to our first topic of the night. Now, get a little music going in the backdrop there. Today, we're going to be talking about Apple TV's new show Severance, the psychological thriller that takes place in, I wouldn't really say quite dystopian type corporate world just yet, because, well, the basic premise of the show is that it takes place in a small town, I believe it's Delaware, is what I understand, where the corporate world has introduced this new concept where what it does is it basically separates your work memories from your playtime memories. As a concept, it sounds pretty awesome, right? You go into work for 8 hours, you do your job, and then when you're done, you have no memory of the experience. Your day starts when you go into the elevator, and then you end it after you get off. Sorry, we're still figuring out our levels here. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with our first guest, Mr. Carrion. What is your initial impression of Severance?
Well, I mean, I've only gotten through the first 2 episodes so far. It's definitely shaping up to be an interesting concept. So far, I have enjoyed Christopher Walken in it. I think it's an interesting idea. I definitely think it's what bosses in previous jobs I've had have certainly wanted to get rid of the out of work talk during work. That being said, I feel like there's definitely an interesting, sinister undertone that I think is going to play out more as the series progresses. We're definitely looking at, a very, could go dystopian at any moment kind of world. Reminds me a lot, actually, also of the show Dollhouse. That was a ancient Joss Whedon thing before he was a terrible human being. Where they'd write new personalities to individuals during the course of the show. So I feel like Severance has definitely got some interesting ideas. I'm curious to see where it goes from here and how the whole story plays out. You're muted, my friend.
Gotta get used to the process still. I think the concept itself is really amazing in of itself, that regardless of what the show's plot goes to, I'm just going to be glad to have at least watched something like this. This is basically the reason why I love sci-fi as much as I do. It's not really an original concept. I mean, originality is kind of overplayed at this point, but it takes ideas and it puts it into this reality of what is your work self going to be like? How are they going to, what are the consequences of what sounds like a great idea? And so far, I mean, the show has just really got you by the edge of your seat without being super, I mean, the best way to describe it is it's excitingly boring. Is how I would probably describe it. And it does such a great job of keeping you like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? But there's no guns. There's no shooting. Nobody's getting killed as far as we know. And it's I like it. I'm really, even however the plot plays out, I think it's just going to be a good concept to just explore in of itself. So it gets an automatic pass and recommendation from me to at least watch once. John, what are your thoughts?
I find it extremely interesting. I think it's like one of the scarier slow burns I've watched in a while, with everything from like the break room being this like terrifying place you don't want to go to like the fact that it's not necessarily like everybody's severed as far as we can tell. Because like there's these 4 characters here in this photo, and then there's also like their like bosses that may or may not be like severed, because they seem to be able to roam free and like watch you. At least that's what's like being alluded to. And that whole conversation seems really confusing, because it's like, who are they picking to be severed and why? I feel like there's a little bit of a like mental instability among the chosen, and like they're playing on it while also using it to their financial benefit. It's pretty interesting, and it just makes me want to figure out what's going on. It keeps making my brain explode with possibility, and I love that about a show. So I'm definitely tuning into the finish.
Absolutely. Carry on. Any follow-up thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely asking some very, very interesting questions, right? I mean, if we even just start with the concept of what are you like when you don't have your memories, right? And taking it to even more interesting places of, if you remove somebody's personality, what's left of them, right? And how are they going to behave? And yeah, I definitely think that Christopher Walken's character, I don't necessarily think he's been severed. I do think that the trying to enforce discipline with something like the break room, which really seems more like a break the human room, is a fascinating idea. And I mean, could you even raise a hand or be upset about a problem if, the you, when you're out of the office, doesn't know about it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, this seems
no
like
time to mull anything over.
Right. This completely seems like a evil corporation's wet dream when you really think about it, right? Because they can really control the flow of information in and out of that building.
Oh yeah, Facebook and Google must be salivating over this show. Like, okay, how do we make this happen? And it's like, no, guys, the point of the show is to not do that.
Well, that's like why my point is like their job seems very like specialized, because it's not like they know what they're doing. They didn't get any training. Their like whole like the premise was just stare at the numbers till you get a feeling, and that feeling will tell you which box to open. And it's like they're just numbers, and it's really a trip. And that's why I brought up the like mental instability thing, is because like the characters are very sporadic, and like they're diverse in their like outie is what they call it in the show. Their outside personality is very like barely holding on to a thread. And if you notice, the main character, he was like losing his mind when people were calling him a slave. He was like, no, people who severed aren't slaves, except like he doesn't even know what he does. So I don't know, it seemed really like he's definitely dealing with a conundrum that he has no idea how to feel about, because he doesn't have time to think all of his thoughts through in a day. And I think that's a weird thought.
Yeah, well, and the actor, everybody is doing a fantastic job so far. Like, by the end of episode 2, I was like, okay, do I get to watch episode 3 now? I gotta wait a week, which, works for us. Something to talk about at least once every week. Give a little review recap, so to speak. Going with the discussion, a thought occurred to me that the possibility, what if there is, because you make a good point, it kind of is a plot hole right now. But this show does a very good job of explaining things backwards. The cinematography and the music for this really just boost the show all that much more. And the first episode where you see Helly, when she's trying to leave and she keeps coming back, I mean, the editing was fantastic. But I watched it a couple times to make sure I understood what was going on. And of course, sure enough, they confirmed it in the second episode that every time she was going outside, her memory was switching back to her normal personality. And then she was being coached back in. And I thought that was just really well done. The fact that they had it go back and forth, like she couldn't leave and she couldn't understand what was, the innie couldn't understand what was going on. But you bring up a valid point about the training, or rather lack thereof, that it seems. And I'm just wondering, what if there's a third severance that takes place that is used just to implant the training portion, but it's meant as more of like a subconscious conditioning? And that's what training consists of. And then they kind of delete the memories as far as like what happened. But because it was training muscle memory, that's why it's still imprinted. So maybe that's why that's part of what goes into PD having trouble with his reintegration. He's not just reintegrating one set of memories. He might be integrating multiple, because who knows how many different personalities they've created and zapped over the course of them being placed in this work environment.
Well, my theory on the job was actually that, like, while I was watching it, was maybe personal experiences get in the way of allowing a person to observe these patterns. So removing those personal experiences is actually making the job possible.
That's an interesting thought. Based off of what Parker was just saying about the using like different forms of training, what if that's part of that break room you described, Corian, with like the emotion is like they're having a PTSD in the numbers. So part of the breaking is just staring at the numbers while getting a certain like feelings of emotions, so that they can then, and when they go out of that emotion room, they're like, okay, I'm refreshed and I'm recentered and I'm good at my job again. And all it is just like reteaching them how to be better at following the rules emotionally. Like it's like making them, like triggering them every time they see the numbers, because they like torture that body, torture that emotion out of them in each instance.
Oh, it's possible. I mean, kudos to Ben Stiller for directing something this complicated, but making it feel, this intriguing along the way too.
Yeah, right out the gate, we're already coming up with crazy ideas. I think that's how you can tell a show is interesting at the very least, but definitely worth the watch, because it makes it more fun to wonder what's going to happen each week between.
Yeah, and honestly, the entire cast is just playing. Everyone is doing such a fantastic job of making this world believable. And not just because they're, playing off each other very well, but it's also I gotta give credit where due to the cast, at least the ones that we've seen on the outside world. So I'm curious to see the differences that they are able to exercise in their craft of acting between the innie personality and the outie personality. I mean, I won't be surprised if, one of them is like literally the same person inside and out. I think that would be an interesting trope to play on. But I also got to give credit to the writers for this, because I did not expect his neighbor to also be his boss. And also, as John brought up, I don't know if she's severed or not. I can't tell, because she's just, at first you think, oh, she's the annoying neighbor that's just giving him a hard time about the garbage cans. So she's obviously just one of those crazy types. You don't even think about her, and you're just like, yeah, I got one of those, or I've had one of those before. Anyone who's ever lived in a house in the city, chances are you've probably had that neighbor that just doesn't understand the way things work, especially in an HOA. There's always the new guy that moves in and can't follow the rules. So they use that to play off kind of that sort of stereotype. And wow, like the second that she started speaking, my wife goes, "Oh, it's his boss," and I'm like, "No way! Are they really playing it that close?" And sure enough, and you can't tell. You just the way that you watch her performance, you're like, is she is she all there, or is she severed too? What's going on? And so, yeah, it creates more questions, which creates more discussion. And again, this is why I love sci-fi right here. This show is exactly why I love sci-fi. When you create unique concepts like this, and they're thought-provoking, and they cause just discussions and theories and the potential consequences of, oh, what if we tried that in real life? And I'm already 2 episodes in, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
absolutely dystopian. Go ahead, Corian.
Yeah, I was going to say the only thing that I'm concerned about is they are definitely raising a lot of questions, and I'm hoping we're going to get answers in a reasonable time frame. Like if they don't start answering things by like I would say episode 4, or at least giving us a general idea, they're going to be in trouble, because I don't know if they're going to hold the audience with just mystery box after mystery box, right?
Yeah. Cozy Koala in the chat says it's the smirk that she has at the end of the 2nd episode. Yes, I completely agree with that. That's really like, it's kind of like, is she just smiling to be cordial, or is that an indicator of, I actually know everything, I'm not severed? And so I'm ready for more. But you do touch on a valid point, and we'll probably this will probably step on some toes here, but we do have our one of our mutual independent content creator friends has boldly stated openly his distaste for Lost, and I'm in agreement with him to the extent of that show did not feel like it had its ending planned out. And that is one of the, you bring up a very valid point, and I'm not just trying to call out Lost. Mystery box writing in general, I think, is one of the greatest frauds ever given to storytelling, because all it does is hype, and then when it comes time to deliver, you're like, well, what did I just spend 3 weeks of my life watching? WandaVision, as good as a lot of those concepts were executed, I just felt kind of, it didn't really, I felt that one was one of those more hype and then failed to delivers types, which is unfortunate, because I did like a lot of what that show was doing. And of course it also comes down to personal preference too. Like, what expectations does the audience set for a resolution? And when that expectation isn't met, then the disappointment comes in. And I'm definitely guilty of that. I'll come out and say it. Like Rogue One, I initially hated because it didn't follow any of my fan theories. And then when I watched it again with somebody else who was more rational about the film, that they just wanted to enjoy the movie, I was like, okay, I can see the appeal. It's not as terrible. It was only bad because I created it in my head to be bad. But it does do a lot of good things, and people like Rogue One, so I don't know if it's this. So to relate that to this, yes, my fear in the back of my mind is that we'll get to the end of the resolution and it'll just be, oh man, what? But like I said, for me, it still gets a pass for at least trying to explore the concept. So if they've got, it's fine to do mystery box writing, and I think the best way to do mystery box writing is just have your ending written down. Have your ending written out. You don't have to have your whole story arc, but have the goal, have the end of the line out there and ready to get there. And then you can have all the fun you want getting to the end point. And in the end, you might hype yourself up a little too much. But if your end goal is planned from the start, it'll likely go over better.
Yeah.
And so that's what I
have a lot of faith in this one. Honestly, I've been following Apple's latest releases lately. So I've watched the Ted Lasso and Suspicion and Invasion, and even I want to say it was Macbeth. I'm bad with the name. The newer one, but I've just noticed that they have this consistency of quality content.
Wait, the Macbeth? Are you talking about the new one with Denzel Washington?
Yes.
Oh, that's out now?
Yeah, on the Apple. So Apple has been delivering a lot of just quality content, but it is a lot of this slow burn, quiet creeping. But it seems like I have a lot of faith that it will deliver because everything else so far has. I don't know if there's any Servant fans watching or who have seen Servant up to where it's at now. It is That's one of the most bizarre psychological thrillers I've ever watched, because it deals with something that like parents deal with in terms of losing a child at a young age, but then it also plays into this whole thing about it might be ghosts, and every season ends on like it's like it could be canceled and you'd be okay with it being over, but it's definitely not over, because like when the next season comes out, it blows your mind. So I have a lot of faith that this will end nicely, but I doubt it will end in a single season. So I think there's a lot to come with this one.
No, I think there's a lot of potential here. What I think my whole thing is, you can only pose questions for so long in a season before you have to answer at least a couple of them. Not necessarily the major questions, but at least some of the ancillary questions to give us enough food to be able to keep that theorizing going.
Yeah, I like that. That's really well said. I like the idea of them, especially if they use a lot of misnomers and misdirects. I find that to be one of the most fun things, especially about the longer series shows. Like the ones that go seasons in a row where like you're like, oh, they answered that question already. And they're like, no, we did not. We just totally lied to you.
To put this in
I agree. They do need
to put this in a good analogy that a lot of other sci-fi fans, especially those who are a fan of The Next Generation, will understand. What Carry Out is basically saying is take the best of both worlds cliffhanger and then like just end it with Picard being captured. Okay, and you don't see what happens to him. You don't see that he's assimilated. It just he gets captured and then that's where the season ends. Okay, imagine how much less attractive that show would have been. That ending would have gone down. Whereas instead you see, oh man, he's actually been assimilated. He's now in the collective, and it ends with Riker saying fire. So I think, yeah, I agree, Kirion. What we need is that satisfying like conclusion / build up that also ends with, you know, that can end on a cliffhanger, but we're not going to be left with a bunch more questions like other certain shows that have just, oh yeah, we'll just have a bunch of cliffhangers at the end and then leave you at that and then come back next year. It's like, no, you got to satisfy the audience. Absolutely. But you're right. Not every question has to be answered. And I did take a peek at the IMDb page. This show is slated for 2 seasons. So no, we're not going to get a resolution this season completely, but you're right. It is going to hinge on the audience being satisfied with whatever endings we do get for this season.
Exactly. And again, like it doesn't even necessarily have to be, you know, full answers to some of these questions. Just enough that we can move the theories down the field. Right? Like if you were to kind of think about it like a football game, right? They have to at least give us a couple of first downs through the first season. Enough to make us want to hang in for beyond halftime.
Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Like they have to answer some of the theories so that we know if we're on the right track or not. If like we keep having to make up new theories every episode, it gets a little bit daunting and then stops being fun.
Right, you don't want it to turn into the Walking Dead formula where you have like 5 minutes of plot in the opening and then a bunch of drawn out emotional drama in the center to fill your hour, and then conclude it with a, oh my gosh, super scary cliffhanger moment. The end. See you next week. And again, that's okay for a little bit, but that can't become your formula. And so, yeah, I do have my fears about this show slipping into a formulaic pattern. Like, and Game of Thrones was the same way. It was, you know, here's this character. This is why they're cool. And this is why you love them. Oh, they're dead. And then we're going to show a pair of boobies. And then we're just going to rinse and repeat that same thing over and over. And it's like, no. And for me, like season 3 of Game of Thrones fell apart because you had that shocking event that took place. And then your resolution episode was very, So, yeah, I hope that I don't know. Yes, I can see where this show is going to have a potentially amazing ending for this first season while still, we don't know what's going on. We might not quite understand what the corporation does still and still be asking questions about that. But I think there's enough of the consequences and ramifications with the characters that we'll see. We'll just see how that resolves over time, because it's like we do have several questions going on. Well, yes, there's the overarching, well, what's this corporation doing with these people, of course, but we're also starting to get invested in each of these people. And I mean, like, man, it wasn't the break room. I forgot what they called it, where they sent the guy to be read all the stuff about his Audi, but then they also, like, every time he overreacts to a fact, he was like docked points, and it was one of those psychological mind games of, no, that wasn't the break room. It was
the psychiatrist.
Yeah, the psychiatrist. And she's doing a psychological ploy on him to, like, try to make him feel good, but then it's like, no, you're only allowed to feel this good, and you have to feel equally good about everything. And it's
the wellness center.
It's the wellness center. And oh man, it's such a so it's scary. I wouldn't want to be an innie, I tell you that much right now. I definitely, if I ever...
Well, the question the series is asking is, if you were an innie, would you even know? Right,
exactly. And they seem to imply that that's not the case. Like, your innie literally just exists awake, constantly working. And that's a scary reality to even contemplate. It's almost like being underway on a ship.
I think that is an interesting thought, because it does seem like the innies are aware that they are innies. From the part like you described earlier in episode 1 at the end, where she's running out the door and just keeps coming back in, which is explained in the second part. Like, she's not really coaxed back in the room. She's like reminded that, like, her innie has no idea that she made this decision and is confused. And if she wants to quit, she can, but she, like, shouldn't. And she's like, yeah, no, I just made this choice. Like, I already am 100% aware that this is the choice I want to make. So, like, the Audis are, like, really aware that they're losing time. But the innies, like, I think it's depicted with Mark, the main character, where he comes in hungover, and he's aware that his Audi was hungover. He's like, yeah, he must have got real drunk last night. Like, they have a concept of time, though they don't feel it or perceive it because they're, like, in a windowless room. They do seem to be aware that they only exist for 8 hours. But they do also seem to blame their Audis more than their, like, corporate overlords for anything.
It seems to me that the characters that have been there, I'm not so sure if they're as aware as they want to think themselves aware. Like, they've gotten used to the routine. And so I almost wonder if they're just playing off the idea that they know when they're asleep, but really they're just as insane as everyone else. They just don't want to admit it because they've been conditioned to cope with their work life. Comment in the chat, Cozy Koala 3, split personality disorder type of issues. Yeah, and I think Petey is going to be showing a lot of that in follow-on episodes as he's forced to reconcile memories that he never had for so many years that have all of a sudden been smashed back into his consciousness. So it's going to be interesting to see how it develops, because you're right. The Helly doesn't seem to think that there's any difference between work or there doesn't seem to be any breaks. Like, it's constantly, to her mind, she's continuing to go. Whereas Adam Scott's character and everyone else is like, oh, well, you just get used to it. You feel refreshed. You notice that you're ready to go for the day. And so I almost wonder if maybe due to the psychological conditioning, they think that they're getting their off time, but they're just convincing themselves that, oh yeah, this is normal, when really it's most definitely not. Carry on. Any additional thoughts?
No, I think we've covered it fairly well. I think the only other piece of it I would say is, Apple TV's definitely come out of the gate with some real winners in terms of programming. And, I think it's definitely going to be the sleeper subscription service that's going to be the little subscription service that could over time.
I agree. I started watching some of Foundation. I did actually read that book, and I do want to read the rest of them, and I do want to watch the rest of that series. And I mean, at the very least, the production value is definitely there, but it also seems that the it feels, especially for this show, that the writers came out to play. And I mean, that's really the base of your story is in the writing. And without the writing, you can have the greatest visuals of all, but if it's not stated as a visual art piece, it's just not going to work over time. So
Yep.
the writing's definitely good. The acting is superb so far. I mean, everybody, especially Adam Scott, like, he's got the personality switched down. I do believe like it's two separate people at times because of how he interacts with people on the outside world versus his work life personality, which is totally different. And I think that's really, like I said, I want to see the rest of these actors shine through the rest of the show. And I mean, I like what I'm seeing so far. So anyone got any good theories as to what they expect? I mean, I don't want you to have to set up too much false expectations, but I'm curious to see what everyone thinks is going on so far. John, we'll start with you.
Based on this discussion, I just came up with a whole idea in theory. The idea, if I don't know if you remember, right when Mark goes in the elevator, Adam Scott's character Mark goes in the elevator. Once he hits a certain point in the elevator ride, a door, like a bell, dings, and he wakes into the other body. I wonder how much of this is just standard hypnosis, just known practices of hypnosis, and the whole treatment that they go through and all that thing is just more to solidify the belief in the hypnosis. Like, we think that they were injected with something that causes this separation, but in reality they were just hypnotized. And that's probably where PD is losing his mind, is he probably did some form of drastic medical procedure to like fix his lost memories from the hypnosis. And
So
that
you don't
could
think
explain like why they're losing memory. Like, because if they mostly the thing with the break room, how do they not remember their experience in the break room? But they also definitely have fear of the break room. So it seems like something's deleted between the time they enter and the time they get out. But how could they
the third
delete that on a
severance that I
daily
posed.
basis? But how could they do that at any given time unless it's something standard like hypnosis? Just a thought.
Yeah, so it seems to me like you're saying it's a combination of hypnosis and the chip as well.
Well, I'm saying it's hypnosis and just constant reinforcement that there was a medical procedure, but never actually describing said procedure and never explaining it, just saying the government, or like, this happened to you. And because you can't remember, and because like they've obviously not like made you feel like Helly hasn't been to the break room yet, for example.
Right.
Helly hasn't been directly accosted like everybody else has to some extent or another.
Yeah, and she
So
seems like she's kind of supposed to be the woman on the inside for like, we're following Adam Scott outside, but we seem to be introduced to the concept of what his first experience was like through her, sort of. And so it's like we're kind of following. It's kind of brilliant, actually. So you think you're following one main character, but you're also following the other in how she's being introduced into this world and environment.
right, because she's you.
Right.
You, the audience.
Well, she's
like,
you
as far
on the
as, like,
inside.
her introduction. Yeah, that's actually really cool. I didn't think about it like that until you just said that.
Yep.
Okay, so my predictions. I've got a few.
All right.
One, at some point, an person's innie and outie are going to switch. So the innie is going to be outside, and the outie is going to be in the office. Okay, that's one. Because it's just too easy to not do.
I'd like to make my guess onto which one it's going to be real quick. If I had to guess right now, I think it's going to be Irving. If anybody's going to have that happen,
quite possibly. Two, I think the nature of the work is going to be the reason why the severance is needed. That there's something about the work that they're doing that's specific to it. And my third one is the reason why this work is happening is it's so important to the larger world that without it, society or whatever would collapse, or at least that's what we're going to be told. that this is so necessary that the world has accepted that this is like some sort of necessary evil.
That's interesting, because especially when you listen to Mark's recording, when he's saying, "I'm so sorry I let down the whole world," that I think that's going to play a major role in it as well. My thinking though is especially based off of those theories, is it corporate? Is it this corporation that's supposedly saving the world? Is it like a messed up version of Kingsman organization? Like, to what extent? Because it seems like the Severance people are mostly just the data hiders. Like, they don't even know how they're hiding the data, because it's just a feeling that tells them what to delete. And I think that plays a major role into who they're working for. I don't know. That's really cool, though.
Yeah. But those are my theories. So.
No, that's some good discussion. Like I said, this was one of the reasons why I get into sci-fi. I mean, it's exploring the possibilities. And I mean, you know, people think sci-fi, they think Star Wars, Star Trek, which, yeah, I mean, those technically count, but this is also the branch of sci-fi that I feel gets overlooked oftentimes, because it's so grounded in reality, but the concept is very much kind of, I would honestly say that the concept leans more fantasy, because we still don't.
It's definitely science, because this is way medical. Like, they're really trying to harp on the medical procedure, whether there is one or not. I think that shows that it's the medical science fiction.
Oh, they've absolutely done research into neuroscience, and I mean, they definitely did their homework when setting up the premise of this show.
I'm just giving credence to your title of calling this science fiction, because this is medical science fiction.
Well, yeah, it is, but it still kind of leans more into fantasy, because the idea of being able to manipulate memories to that extreme is still a very unknown concept. And you hit on a very good point with the hypnosis, but hypnotherapy is not secure, if you can understand what I'm saying. And what I mean by that is, there's plenty of cases where people get hypnotized and it can either just wear off over time, or in the process of people who do try to do hypnotherapy to do memory blocking, it's not a guarantee. Well, and even if it is, it's usually like a Band-Aid. This show
seems to rebuttal to those thoughts. The person who's worked there the longest is Irving, and he's only been there 3 years. And he's like, we see the scene where his mind is melting. Like, it seems like this job affects the Ennies and the Outies like a presidency.
Oh yeah.
And I think that could be a major factor. Like, we don't know how long PD worked there.
Right.
And Mark got promoted over Irving, and even though Irving's the most senior, so like, what does that also tell us? Is that maybe like the smart ones last a year before they PD, and then the other gentleman, I can't remember his name. Let me pull up the IMDb.
Which one? The other employee?
The black
Dylan?
Gentleman.
Played by Zach Cherry?
Zach Cherry. He definitely seems more like what Irving would have started out as. Just somebody who figured out how the system works and works within it. And Hallie is definitely more Mark in his beginning time. So I wonder if we're going to watch as Hallie and Mark keep losing their minds, whereas like Irving and Dylan just kind of keep trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I mean, Dylan definitely seems, I've definitely worked with a lot of Dylans in my life who are just like, oh yeah, you know, we get, you know, these little perks and stuff, and this is what's great about working here. And I'm like, this is a piece of crap. This is not an incentive. And so it's interesting to see the different personalities that come out of the Ennies, because you still have those, they still play on the various workplace tropes to use that in the storytelling, whereas Helly is like, you all are crazy to think this is okay, until she started figuring out how to solve data, and then all of a sudden the job starts to make a little bit more sense. So I'm curious to see if I really am interested to see how her character develops, because I could see her going one of two ways. And I mean, there's different ways, obviously, but the one of two ways that I can see it is the one, you have her slowly start to embrace the work life and she actually likes it. Like the ending to 1984 when she loves Big Brother now. I could see her going that way. I could also see, and that would be even more interesting because then she would become an adversary to Mark, who now may or may not be trying to break out of the system like Petey did, because his innie is probably going to be, because if you notice, his innie is questioning things as well. He took the pictures down when he wasn't supposed to, but he hid one in a separate spot from all the others. Why did he do that? What's his motive? What's going on with Mark's innie that may end up catching up with his outie, so to speak? And then, of course, we haven't seen the concept of whether or not these people can actually dream, and what the ramifications of having dreams might look like. Do they dream about work? Do they dream about their innie? Does their innie have any influence in the subconscious to be able to get a hold of him? How did Petey break out? Like, there's so much going on with this show, but it's all extremely compelling. So I think for my theories, I think I think we'll either see Helly either embrace the work life, or she'll start seeing what it is and resist it along with Mark. I don't know. I don't know anything, and it's been a while since I felt the show do that, where it just really gets you to think about theories, but then your theories just kind of derail because you're like, you know what? This is awesome. I'm also just going to enjoy the ride in the process. So my kind of advice to the audience, and I guess to everyone here, would just be, yeah, let's keep having our theories, but don't do what I did with Rogue One and cling to them as law. Then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. But I do feel good about this show. It's kind of more of an irrational fear about it not working out. So I think it's going to be good. And like I said, the concept of itself makes this worthwhile to watch. I'm going to watch every episode of probably both seasons and see where it goes. So yeah, with that, I think we'll go ahead and start to transition to our next topic. John, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you thought of Redemption by Will Jordan?
Redemption by Will Jordan. I find it to be a fascinating novel. I haven't finished it quite yet. I'm definitely getting into it.
This is a non-spoiler review, so that's fine.
Yeah. So I do enjoy the military stories, the way they're written, the way, especially the way Will Jordan chose to write this one. I felt that it was he didn't do a disservice to the military. I feel like there was definitely a misunderstanding of military's respect for certain things. Mostly just the way that he kept saying Central Intelligence Agency, that it's a misnomer. Nobody in any job likes to say the full name of their job at any point, especially not in their head.
I can give you some explanation in a second.
But other than that, like, I feel like this book it's a very, very fun read. It is up there with the Lee Child style of writing. One character who has a story and obviously is more aware than we are to the current events, and I find that to be just awesome. So it's a very good book. Definitely recommend.
Yeah, so while it is a bit, because you and I have military service under our belt, while it is a bit silly to say it all the time, what you got to understand, especially coming from a published author myself, is you got to assume that your audience doesn't know some things, especially if you're writing from a military perspective. And so you kind of have to take that extra step to explain stuff. And that's not necessarily just with the book itself, but even in general, when I'm trying to, share sea stories and whatnot with people, I realized, like, okay, I need to, 1, slow down, 2, drop all acronyms when you're having these conversations, and 3, you just gotta, sometimes you might see it as dumbing down because you're like, you already know what's going on. You already know what you're trying to say, but you got to realize your audience does not. Most people, this comes as a shock, I know, don't know what the military does or is like. So while it does get annoying, I agree for some people that either, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the military, but anyone who's done that corporate life where acronyms are like your second language. Yeah. We find it ridiculous that people would say the name of the agency all the time. However, you gotta think of this like you're trying to reach an audience of millions of people with millions of different understandings of how things work, and you want to keep consistency there. So yes, I understand it's annoying, and I agree it's a little silly. However, you just got to think of it in terms of it's easier to tell a simple story, and if you're going to tell a complicated story, you got to make the story that you're telling, you got to make the events simple and easy to understand. Otherwise, if your message gets lost, then it's not going to come across. So, Kiran, did you ever get around to reading this book yet, by chance?
So I actually have. I'm actually on book 8 of the series.
Oh, awesome. So we can do some follow-up in the future.
Yeah. The series okay, so I come for a little bit of background info. My mom was a Navy nurse. My father was in armored reconnaissance. My sister, who is an engineer, worked for General Dynamics for a long period of time. And I guess what I can get away with saying right now is I served in my own way. Which should tell you everything about what organizations I've been working with. There's a lot that happens in the first book that really does remind me of family members' experiences. It does remind me a lot of you can tell that this is somebody like the writer, Will Jordan. If he didn't serve, then he definitely had close personal ties with people who have. Because the after effects of service clearly come through.
Yeah.
And it's very authentic writing, which is what dragged me along for the ride. I like where he's gone with it in the first book, and it definitely leaves it open to where he goes throughout the series.
Yeah, I definitely want to make time to get the rest of this series read, and I think we'll probably maybe make that a monthly goal for the channel, because we do want to promote books here as well. And I know books are boring, but they're a necessary. I agree. They are a forgotten part of our pop culture that, while I admittedly hated reading as a child, well, and you know what, I'm probably just get a little philosophical tangent, so please bear with me. The reason that I didn't like reading as a child was because I was told at a young age that comic books are for stupid people, and that there's no value in reading comic books. And so, being a young child, as you might know this yourselves, probably having been one, I assume, you probably know that developing as a child, you get impressed on very easily. You see something, it's on your brain very early on. Well, it's not just seeing stuff, it's when people try to influence children that is very critical. That's why our education needs to be structured in a way that we figure out what kids are good at and what they like, and then we try to build around that to either help foster their creative mindset, or if they're feel like they're going to be more in the work mindset, to find, basically we want to try and foster a good learning environment for our children. Well, that starts with reading. And the elitist idea that you have to read a non-picture book to matter, looking back in my childhood, I'm like, well, screw you. Because comic books, as we've seen, the way they've hit the cinema in the last 10 years, are actually a good source of story and can be a very vital piece of our pop culture. And for me, especially, like, I am a visual learner. I very much, that's probably why I'm really into movies and shows, is because I do visuals a lot. I know it's weird for me to say, being a published author, saying that I hated reading and that I struggle with reading, and I do, but that's part of it's how I was brought up, and also my own laziness as well. I'm not saying that, I blame this one person that I can't remember from my childhood as the reason that I can't read. No, not like that. It's because I do believe it is certain a sense of personal responsibility. So I am trying to get more into reading more, and audiobooks are a big help for me, because what I can do with an audiobook is I can put it on in my ears, and then I can just distract the rest of my brain with either a video game or just something else to help me pay attention. And of course, if I'm starting to lose focus on the audiobook, I then try to, okay, I'm going to set it down and focus on the audiobook for a minute, or maybe pull up the digital copy and read along, which I think is helpful as well for a lot of people in my position. So my point being is that it's not appropriate to say what is and is not appropriate reading material for children. I mean, with a sense of certain content. I mean, obviously, we don't need to be throwing them Playboy magazines at 6 years old. That's not where I'm going with this at all. What I am saying is, if a child wants to read comic books, then let them read comic books. And maybe one of these big comic book publishers can start taking some of these big novels out there. And I've seen some people do it where they'll have, like, I would love to have Galaxia get a graphic novel adaptation. I think that would be awesome and a great way, an extra medium to get my story out there. And I think Will Jordan's book could absolutely be a smash success as a graphic novel. And I think maybe that's what we can try to do to sort of bridge the gap between books without pictures and movies, because that's what comics was that inspiration of especially before these big blockbuster films. That comic book was your blockbuster movie. I mean, I've heard lots of people who got into it, and I'm probably going to try and get into comics now, even though, I'm post 20s, entering my 30s. So a little behind on that train, but I think that comic books have absolutely been given a very unfair shake in our pop culture throughout the years, because people have this illusion of what a good story is, and it has pictures, somehow it's less important. And it's like, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is, whether a story needs a visual aid or not completely depends on the complexity of the visual you're trying to evoke in somebody's head, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, I love to read. I also have a lot of graphic novels. I also have a huge movie collection. But the stories that I read are very different than the stories I would want a graphic novel of. And they're very different, again, from the ones I'd want a movie of. For example, I love Denis Villeneuve's Dune. The books, reading them was a slog because I had trouble understanding the visuals that he was putting forward, right? So the movies really helped there. Conversely, Jim Butcher, who is an author I highly recommend you take a look at. He writes a series called The Dresden Files. It's basically an urban fantasy novel where he takes the genre of a wizard and the genre of a film noir detective and puts them together. So the guy's literally a film noir detective in Chicago. Or sorry, a wizard in Chicago, in like a film noir kind of Chicagoland idea, like where, the mobsters could be human mobsters, or they could be a group of fairies horning in on the mobsters' racket. You're not really sure right at the start of the story. The femme fatale could be a vampire. Like, you don't know yet, right? So really neat idea, but he does all three. His books are written. There has been a TV series, and he does do graphic novels, but he tells very different stories in each one of those because he's playing with those genres. So I feel like all three genres are vitally important, but they should be used to tell different styles of story.
Right. And my point with maybe bringing more graphic novels adaptations is really just to help get the stories out there. But I definitely see your point, and that is a valid point, that there is some mystique with a text novel. Because everybody then gets to have their own idea of what it inspires within what you see. And then you're not necessarily... So that is kind of one of the downsides to graphic novelizations or even movies and shows, is that then, while you do get to experience the story, which I think is vital, you're kind of left with somebody else's vision of what it should be like. And so that is one of the nice kind of nuances of having text. Like, I don't believe novels should just go away by any means. So like, absolutely, people need to keep writing books, keep enriching our culture as a species, because that's, I mean, I hope that certain production companies seems like Apple TV in particular continues to pull these other unknown stories. And I mean, yeah, I've got my own personal bias on that stake. Like, I'd love a TV deal myself. However, it's not just about me, it's about everybody else. I mean, I've gotten to not really know Will Jordan on a personal level, but we've interacted a couple times. And I mean, the man straight up called me a legend, which was, yeah, I didn't expect that. So, but that's somebody that I think his work absolutely deserves. Redemption, I think would make the entire Ryan Drake series, I think would make an excellent TV thriller. Would
And
probably
an
feel a
affordable
little
one. And an affordable one. I mean, when you got things like Jack Ryan, and if you follow the Rainbow Six series, it very quickly goes from tales in Iraq to tales in Hezbollah to tales in all of these other nations in a row in one story. But Will
Yeah.
Jordan's story sticks to one spot, one area, dealing with a very a wealth of information and a wealth of detail. But as far as like films go, if you want to take a chance on an author who already is alive, who can tell you what he intended explicitly, I feel like that, especially one who critiques film so much, like give him the chance
Yeah.
to, maybe not direct, but co-direct his own show based on his own characters that he's already invested in, and let's see him put that on paper. I think that would be the coolest challenge. And you're right, I think people like Apple they definitely have the spare change. Like,
Well,
let's
it
be
doesn't
honest, they have all of the capital to
Yeah, it
just
doesn't necessarily have to be
waste.
Apple, but I think we're about to hit. I do believe, and I mean, you can see on my main channel, Papa Delta Yankee, some of my thoughts regarding certain films. I do think we're about to hit a shift in pop culture where people are going to start kind of wanting to move away from the nostalgia era of things, because we keep going back to stuff that's already been done.
I think we're already there. I think we're way
and that's-
past there, but our movies aren't releasing like they're supposed to. Like, I mean, obviously we just dealt with COVID and dealt with his sense of a word, but more than anything, like, movies got halted for an entire year. So like a bunch of movies that had been banking on the nostalgia buildup just lost all chance of releasing, and now they're all releasing in a wrong order, because that all these studios talk to each other. They try to release their stuff so it's exactly in an even competition, so nobody's really losing anything. And in this case,
it sounds like you have
lost
a thought.
that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the general rule of thumb, at least from what I've dealt with for my contacts in Hollywood, is usually movies lag behind the culture by about 3 to 4 years. Now, COVID has pushed that back another year, so we're going to see about a 5-year lag now for the next little while between where the culture is at and where the movies are at. So I think you guys are right that it does lag a fair bit behind. John is absolutely right. It's going to lag back even more right now because of COVID. But I do think also that we are getting to the point in the streaming wars where people are going to be looking for that coup de grace idea, that quintessential series that's just going to make the other streaming services obsolete because everyone's going to need this service. So if something like a Will Jordan series will do that, it'll absolutely get picked up.
Yeah, and I hope that he does. And I mean, there's other up and coming authors and other established authors that I'm starting to other works I'm starting to read and get to know, and even just some of the premises that I've read, like the synopsis. I mean, you've already captured my interest just talking about the Dresden Files. And so that's kind of, yes, we want to talk about other shows, great shows and whatnot, but here we do also want to try to bring back that lost art, so to speak. I mean, it's not really lost, it's just people like getting the stories a lot easier and in a method that's you just sit down in front of your TV and watch it. I mean, that's not that hard. And that's why audiobooks, thankfully, audiobooks are very popular, because at the very least, you're having someone read it to you, but you usually come in two different forms. Like, I like what the Audible audio plays do, which those are pretty high quality sound productions. but I also like the simplistic ones of people just reading. The Foundation version that I listened to was very dry, but it was direct. I was able to follow it along very easy, and I was able to come up with my own, imagination of things. And so it's nice that while people probably might continue to move away from actually reading traditional books, at least probably for a little while longer, we can still find ways to bring that medium back. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people have missed, especially up and coming streamers, is like, well, is anyone doing books? And so that's why we want to kind of integrate that a little bit, but also acknowledge we still like shows, we still like TV. I'm a sucker for good visuals at times, and oh man, you hit the nostalgia just right. I mean, I'll enjoy it. I won't lie. I did like Book of Boba Fett for the time it went through. Probably never going to watch it again, but I did enjoy the nostalgia bait of it. And that's also why, again, I will probably not going to go one episode without mentioning Spider-Man No Way Home, but that was an excellent use of nostalgia. Because it didn't even bank on the nostalgia. It just used that to bring you in and said, hey, here's a wholesome movie about seeing the best and even the worst of people. And it's like, wow, what a great message to serve people about forgiveness and about just trying to be the better person. And I love No Way Home. And that goes without saying. But.
And not just even the best in other and worst in other people, but the best and worst in yourself, really, too.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
I think that, especially Spider-Man No Way Home, I think what it truly challenged more than anything is that, like, we all are so used to superheroes fighting super villains, and those villains deserve to have their butt whooped. But in reality, Spider-Man No Way Home showed us that they need their mind changed just as much as they need a good butt whooping, you know? Like, they don't necessarily need one or the other. A lot of people, especially somebody who's like roided out on crazy, whatever stuff Green Goblin took, that's gonna mess you up, right? And so that explanation of like, no, he's gonna need to be tied up while he gets his mind corrected, but he still needs the chance to get his mind corrected. These villains don't deserve death.
Right,
I think
and
they hit that on the head because a lot of superhero shows don't,
Right, and there's tons of good stories that we could potentially be showcasing here, and that's also why I want to get more books out there. I mean, yeah, I do have a vested interest for my own product, of course. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some noble hero on an endeavor to help unknown authors. I mean, I'm trying to help other authors, but yes, I have my own motivations to get this. It's like it's similar to people who get involved with, stuff like, oh, I'm, against breast cancer now, which, it's like, okay, that's great. What brought you to it? Oh, well, I got breast cancer. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. It's great you're a part of it, but it just feels like some people try to come off as, oh, I'm such a giver and I'm giving up so much for this. It's like, well, no, the reality is we all have our own motivations to get behind causes. And that's my own, is I did it. I published a book. It was one of the hardest things of my life, but it was one of the most worthwhile things. I got to get people to see it. But I also realized there's a bunch of other books that people don't see, and I would like to try and help them to get more visibility to it. I mean, Will Jordan doesn't really need my help to get that. He's clearly made it established himself. However, I still like his work. I still respect the man enough to want to showcase it even on my show. And Caron, since you've read more of them, I'm looking forward to doing that, and we might just continue that as a monthly tradition where we talk Will Jordan's series. I mean,
yeah,
it's obviously you made it to book 8 of 9, so it must be doing something right, I hope.
Yeah, it's solid. It had this weird kind of there was a TV series, I want to say the early aughts, called The Unit.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right?
CBS.
Yes, and what got me into Will Jordan's writing is it had a very The Unit feel to it in a lot of ways. I mean, very different stories, but it had that kind of feel to it, right? Where these guys, have to have a life, but also, have a very critical job. And the lingo was right, and everything was just kind of there. And that's what kind of stuck me to it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll breeze through them. Now, I'll admit, I read fast. I can get through a book in 2-3 days, right? Like a decent sized novel, like a 300-page novel in 2-3 days.
That's
And
that's
you
always
know,
been my shortcoming too. By the way, it's like, oh, I'm a slow reader. I can't do it. So,
but it's one of those that comes with practice, right? I mean, I hate to be that guy, but look, when you're a witch, you've got a lot of reading to do. So, yeah, you're poring over tomes of ancient lore, going, wait a minute, how do I translate that from this language? Okay, well, now I got to teach myself this language to be able to read this other passage. So, you pick up things pretty quick, but and I also just want to reiterate what you were saying about audiobooks. I mean, that's where audiobooks are awesome. By the way, the Dresden Files, the audiobooks, read by James Marsters.
The author?
So Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, very
Oh,
nice.
okay.
Yeah. Who has an amazing Chicagoan accent when he puts it on. So
Oh,
yeah.
so it gives you even more immersion then.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
no,
No,
totally worth it.
That premise. I mean, I'm not like. I'd say I'm more of a fanboy when it comes to noir type stuff, but I definitely I've always loved that atmosphere though,
Yeah.
the speakeasy style, the jazz music that always that or rather blues style. I mean, like Blade Runner is one of my favorite films, and that one, I mean, I know probably gonna send our view count to negative 1,000 for saying this, but I like the theatrical cut. I know I said it.
Okay.
Because I feel like the addition of the voiceover really just drove the atmosphere further. Was it necessary? Probably not. I understand Ridley Scott being upset about his art being trampled on like that. At the same time, this is one of the reasons why, even if I'm poor for life, fine, I'm never going to sell out at this point, because I'm watching the history of artists who do sell their works, and I'm going it's just not worth it. Like, if you agreed to those conditions when you made that movie, and so yeah, it sucks someone comes in to change your project that you feel is your baby, but if you agreed to those circumstances, then you just kind of have to deal with it. And I'm not necessarily justifying the producer's actions and say that what they did was okay. Clearly, it seems that somebody else had a different vision for that product and they thought it would work. And some would argue that, oh, well, if it didn't have that narration, it wouldn't have bombed. And I think I'm of the belief that regardless of what version you watch, the story is never clear enough to get across on one viewing, and requires, and even Ridley Scott had to come out and explain his own work. And to me, that's kind of where you fail as a writer to get your point across. It is if you have to do more explanations on stuff, and that's not to be conflated with discussions or theories or other questions that you might have raised. It's just, it comes down to the core plot of your story. And if that's not clear, then you kind of need to work on your message better for the next time. And I guess Ridley Scott's gotten better with time. I don't know. I enjoyed Prometheus when I watched it, but I definitely look back at that going, I think I really just enjoyed the music in the moment for that movie. The plot was a little, at least it wasn't super complicated, to give him credit on that one. So I think while Blade Runner is very controversial in that regards, I think it comes back to, when you're trying to get a project off the ground and you have to make compromises, you got to accept that this is the one you got to make compromises on. So that's one of the reasons why I'm proud to be independent, is because I don't have to compromise anything. My work is my work, and you either agree to it or we don't make it happen. And yeah, I would love for a television deal, but I also hope that Will Jordan doesn't have to compromise too much if his story gets picked up, because honestly, you could literally just take that and throw it on screen and it's going to be a success. I mean, it doesn't even need any changes for any creative anything. It's almost like he wrote it in anticipation of getting it put on television. That's how easy it would be to just literally transcribe it to a script and I think it'd be a very successful show on any platform that puts it out there, because I mean it's a good story.
Yeah. No, I think it would be solid. And as for Blade Runner, I think all three of the major cuts have their pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I personally enjoy Final Cut a little bit more, but I think I like Final Cut because I had seen the other two cuts first.
Interesting.
And I think if I hadn't seen the first two cuts, I wouldn't enjoy Final Cut as much.
So that's so you make a very fascinating point in that having been previously influenced by seeing those others, it's almost like you would have had to have seen those others in order to really enjoy the final cut. So yeah, I agree with that stance completely. I think it's like it's not about picking which cut is the correct cut. I think it's really which one you enjoy. And I probably should give Final Cut another view again, because I don't.
Yeah.
I think I was drunk when I watched it.
Yeah, and I mean, really, when we're talking versions of Blade Runner, we're like, okay, which of these three nearly perfect steaks do you like best, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no wrong answer. There's just personal preference, right?
Visually and musically, like, let's just say for discussion's sake, the plot was utter trash. I think Blade Runner would still survive simply on those objective metrics. Vangelis, like, I'm a believer that if you have a good soundtrack, that's half your movie. And not even just necessarily musically, but if your sound mixing is bad, that will kill your film faster than bad writing. So like the sound, writing, and visuals, I think, are all equal in their necessity. And so we have great sound and we have great visuals, and those are consistent regardless of what version you watch. So regardless, Blade Runner will always be a legacy piece because that model work still holds up to this day. And it really just puts CGI to shame. The more advanced, you could see how even in 4K, watching something like Blade Runner or Independence Day, you can still see just how much better the art holds up over the years, even with the compositing. Even though in some places, like in Star Wars, you can see through a TIE fighter wing on a couple of frames, I still will take that over CGI any day. And I don't mean like to disparage CGI. I think CGI works best as a complementary effect, not necessarily the primary effect. And that's why Lord of the Rings over the years is going to suffer, because while the models are still going to look fantastic, the orcs not so much. So, which that is what it is, you know. But that's not the case with Blade Runner. Blade Runner's just going to look great regardless of what version you watch.
Oh yeah.
John, any additional thoughts on Redemption? John, are you still with us?
Sorry about that. I muted myself. No, I think that definitely satisfies my opinion. I agree with you in what you're saying about promoting writing. I hated reading back in the day for similar reasons, except I was just told that fiction overall is just useless until I started becoming a writer and realized that, well, if you can write good fiction, then fiction is the most influential in your day-to-day. So it's really about what you want to do. That's what writing is. That's what type of writing is going to most benefit you. And so for me, I love writing, and I look forward to doing more discussions on writing in general. Like, even as we discuss these shows and games and stuff, one of my most critical points to look at is how things are written, because, like, though I may not be the most learned in writing styles, I'm definitely learned in what I enjoy witnessing or what I enjoy taking in. And so, like I said, like with Will Jordan, I think he's definitely writing a story worth reading, and I definitely intend on finishing this book. But at the same time, like, it's all about what place of mind you want to be in, and what media is going to fill that void in that moment. And don't be ashamed if it's a comic book, or if it's a big book, or if it's a TV show or a movie. But you can still learn from all of the writers. Anybody who puts together anything wrote something. They had to write a scene, they had to write a script, they had to write things that you don't even know they wrote down sometimes. Like, hey, do this misnomer. You have to trip on accident and make it look like an accident. And you don't know that they wrote that, but this actor just falls down all of a sudden, and you're like, what? So I think it's important to accept that writing comes to us in every way that it can.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was also going to say, and like when it comes to nonfiction versus fiction, look, nonfiction runs societies, but fiction builds them. Right?
Paints the better future.
All right. I mean, like, yes, you need nonfiction work to, you know, keep a society going and to inform and to educate. But without those stories, without those like morality tales, the foundation of a culture won't exist. Right? Take a look at every culture that's ever existed. All of them have those stories, whether you want to call it Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology or like biblical tales. All of that stuff serves as the foundation for a culture. Without that stuff there, without those stories, without that which makes us alive, you don't get to have questions about whether it's whether somebody should be charging so many, coins for a cart, because nobody will agree on anything. Nobody has a shared reality to, like a shared culture to work from. So, both of them are vital.
Yeah.
Very well spoken.
I think that's a good point. And I'll just finish this segment with, this is why we're putting books into our general interest entertainment, is because they are a core of our storytelling. And I think that it's if you don't want to read books, that's fine. I don't think there's any reason to force the issue. And I think a lot of that elitist attitude of, well, I'm better than you because I read books has really been a detriment to our culture, because it creates lines in the sand that are totally unnecessary. I think it's better to take the approach of being that more empathetic, understanding. Yeah, I get it. Books can be boring at first. I'll even put myself on. This thing is huge, okay? I get it. I don't expect people to read it. I mean, there's lots of black and white text there that, I'm not. That's one of the reasons why I'm not offended when someone says, I haven't read your book yet, I just have to make the time. It's like, I get it, okay? It's 500 pages, 557 pages. Like, I'm a little hurt, but I've also got to keep perspective. Like, well, what books am I reading? Oh, right, not a whole lot. So, the karma's is gonna work its way through, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so, but we do also want to get away from othering ourselves in that respect. Some people want to watch only. I've met people that will not even touch a movie or a show if it has a specific studio attached to it, or even a specific actor. Like, one of the biggest things I've been coming to blows at people in discussions with is John Cena and Peacemaker. Like, I get it, okay? You don't like the guy. That's your choice. I'm not going to say you're anything less for having an opinion. That's just silly. I just know that you're missing out because of your preconceived prejudice in that sense. I understand where it comes from, but as, one of our mutual friends, Dictor Van Doobcock, would say, well, he doesn't say it, I paraphrase it this way: separate the douche from the craft, okay? You don't like John Cena as a person, that's fine. We're not asking you to go have a beer with him, to go, raise his children, and to go be his buddy. That's not what we're saying at all. And I don't want to make this about Peacemaker, so to speak, but I just want to say real quick, I felt that show was also kind of giving him a chance to just kind of put himself on display. And I really felt that was a moment when I got to change my stance on him. Do I think he's a douchebag? 85% douche. Otherwise, I'd have a beer with the guy. But anyway, long-winded point to bring about that you shouldn't deprive yourself of the opportunity to enjoy something because of brand loyalty. And I've especially, we're about to, we'll transition soon to the gaming segment, but I especially have been enjoying a lot more games because I stopped othering myself in a lot of genres. Like, I've actually been trying and this is the other thing, like, a lot of my other friends are very understanding of the fact they're not expecting me to go full, commit 100% to a new game. They're just wanting me to try it because they're excited about it. And that's what I'm trying to do here with this show. Is I'm not trying to say that you have to do X, Y, and Z to fit in here. No, absolutely not. All opinions within the terms of service within YouTube are permitted here, and we will at least listen and we will exchange ideas. And if at the end we don't agree, that's fine. But if this was an actual studio, we'd all be going to get drinks afterwards and hanging out. That's the culture that I want to try and help facilitate. Is let's bring respect back into discourse, and we can start it with our pop culture, because I used to be that way. I used to be like, oh, if you don't like Star Wars, you're a dumbass. And oh man, I was such an idiot. And so that's what I want to help with this show, is to show that, look, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have our different opinions on stuff. But at the end of the day, we control ourselves, and we are the masters of our body, and that's it. And so it's important to respect the opinions of others. And that's why, even though John thinks that saying CIA is dumb, or saying Central Intelligence Agency is dumb, that's fine. We allow disagreements on this channel, believe it or not. You're allowed to not agree. This is, I don't want to say it's a safe space for disagreement, because I am a shameless ball buster, but this is not a place that's going to be, you must agree with me. We'd probably lose viewers just on that premise alone. But,
yeah, I always feel like, look, find stuff you're passionate about, get into it, and then share it with others so that even if they don't like it, they get to appreciate the passion that you have for it. I think that's the way to go. I think having that moment of being able to share something wonderful with somebody is awesome, and we should be doing that more.
Yep, I
Absolutely.
completely agree, and that's what I'm also realizing within myself and appreciating. While I might not get into somebody else's passion per se, I can at least respect so what I do to empathize, go based off of what you're saying, is I try to imagine one of my favorite shows or movies, and I try to see, okay, the feelings that I get from that, this person must be experiencing something similar with this. And if that's what's the impact they're having, maybe I can try to at least enjoy it on that basis. So, all right, next up, the 25th season of South Park is out. I totally forgot to completely catch up. I watched the first episode, but I'm not worried about any spoilers for the other two episodes. If you both have watched them, please share your thoughts, and I'll just anticipate what else happens in the next two episodes. Carrie, why don't you lead us into this one?
Okay, well, I mean, the first episode of season 25, I believe, is Pajama Day.
Yes.
And, if that isn't Matt and Trey poking fun at mandates, I don't know what is, because that's clearly what they're up to in this whole episode. But I think they did it with a lot of interesting respect for both sides of the argument, and kind of left it open to, yeah, look, we're going to mock all of this, but really what we're trying to do is make you think, which is what South Park does best. When South Park does it, they do it right. I think that was a fantastic way to go about doing it. I think they couldn't have timed that better. I think they've got what have they got it down to now? It's something like they can kick an episode out within like 8 or 9 days or something like that.
6 days to air, and that's a documentary that I absolutely recommend, even if you're not a huge South Park fan. All right, we've got our second panelist, or I guess third still trying to figure out everybody's roles here. I don't know. Carry on. You're probably going to end up being a regular on this show. We'll see. But anyway, I'd like to introduce real quick Mr. Bronson Fiore of Super Gamecraft. Bronson, why don't you give yourselves a quick 30-second introduction? Tell the world who you are and why you're here.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Bronson Fiore of Super Gamecraft, twitch.tv/Super Gamecraft. I was a professional game journalist and internet commentator for a decade, and then that job ended, and I now just do shit on Twitch.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you and your perspective, especially when we get to our next segment. But we are talking South Park, which I do believe you still watch.
I do, just I'm not current.
Oh well, then sorry if we spoil it, but I mean it's South
fine.
Park. It's not like it's not like Darth Vader is Cartman's father.
Yeah, no, I thought I was gonna be like, well, I am massively late, but whatever.
Hey, it's all good, buddy. I'm just glad you're here because I was getting a little worried because the next segment would have been a little fascinating. We'd have to have Carry On take it, and I think he's only touched the new expansion just briefly, but we'll get to that in a second. Back to what Carry On was saying, I completely agree. I mean, Matt Stone and Trey Parker have just a really brilliant way of speaking to the audience, but also like they make fun of everybody, and I think that's one of the reasons I've respected their craft is because they don't hold back, but they also are not trying to make anybody necessarily feel inadequate. They're just trying to bring the truth of the information. When people want to know about Mormonism and Scientology, I say, you're going to find this hard to believe, but South Park actually has a very good introduction into those topics. And even if you just decide that overview is satisfying, that's still, they do their homework. They're not idiots. And so, yeah, I thought this episode, they really, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised that they keep pushing it with how far they think they can go. But man, they just did not. Yeah, they brought it out this first episode, and I'm excited to see the rest of the season. I feel the show's peak was the 2015 season. Personally, I thought a lot of good events happened in that one. That was very informative, but also hilarious. And that's the other thing. South Park's not always serious about everything. They do some dumb episodes for the sake of dumb episodes. I mean, as you mentioned, 6 days to air. You're gonna do whatever you can do in that time. So John, thoughts on new South Park?
Oh, I am loving it. I think one of the things that the South Park writers really do expertly is that they point to the biggest source of the majority of the problems is groupthink. Something we finally experienced in real life, but like I've been rewatching the majority of that show, and I don't know if y'all are aware, but cancel culture is not new at all. Like they had their episode of cancel culture during the Iraq War, like during the initial like first 2 years of it or something. I can't remember which episode or season. I came in on like season 5. I decided to skip ahead and start from there again. And I mean, I think it was season 6 they did cancel culture, and that was like right around 2001. And so it's not that they're not afraid to test the medium, is that they're not afraid to call everybody an idiot for just following along to the message. Like, what if everybody is leading you astray? Think for yourself. And they constantly keep harping on that in surprisingly, current methods. Like the same story over and over. Guys, stop being sheep. Stop being sheep. Cartman's an idiot. Don't listen to him. And you listen to him again. Jesus, fuck. You messed up. I think that's something that happens way too often
that didn't take long.
In this series. Every time. It's going to be me pretty often. But no, it is definitely one of those seasons that like I thought it was going to take a different turn because of season 24 where they had only the couple COVID episodes in the Integrity special. But season 25 opened up just like season 8 did, and I was blown away by that like return to normalcy at least in their episode viewing style. They went from movies and you think, oh, this is their new medium, and they're like, no, we're just kidding, we're going back to being just as like we were on Comedy Central, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so for the audience, just so you know, we do try to keep this PG-13, so we have used our one F-bomb for the stream. That is now done.
Wait, I thought it was one F-bomb per person.
No.
Oh.
No, we go by movie rules here.
Damn
one
it.
F-bomb per street. You know what? We'll consider an exception since you're a new guest and my producer decided to use it. We'll maybe give you one, but you make sure it counts and it's crafty and it's classy. If you want. But anyway, Bronson,
can we do
the
the Martian like?
Oh, sorry. Go
Can we
ahead.
do the Martian like cut away so it just cut away to a mute of us swearing then? As ours.
Of course we can. Nope, nuts. Absolutely. If you censor yourself, I have no problem with that. If you want to even make your own bleeping noise, that's just absolutely. It's just not all 4 letters set out more than once typically, but we'll have to make an exception this one time.
I gotta do, since there's a delay on streams typically. What you should do, and I'm not sure if you're running a Stream Deck, but you can actually build a censor button into a Stream Deck, so you can bleep people if there's enough delay on your stream.
That's good to know. Go ahead and give us your just general thoughts about South Park real quick before we transition to our last segment of the night.
Oh, I think it's brilliant. I've always liked South Park. That post-COVID special they did, like 2 months ago, was so on the nose it hurts. So yeah, it's great. Like I said, I haven't caught the new season yet, so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get this. This is actually Super Gamecraft playing some Destiny. There's also a little Final Fantasy going on in the background there too. New duo stream tactic that is patent pending, I guess.
You could have just we did the duo stream yesterday, but on launch day we just did Destiny. I'm surprised you didn't pull that footage.
Oh, I just, from what you were describing about last night's run, it sounded like it was worth at least putting some of that up to bring back those happy memories.
Yeah, it's 2 hours in the same room. Super good.
So Bronson, why don't you give us a quick overview of what Destiny is real quick, and then dive into the new expansion and why you're excited.
Destiny 2 is I call it like a pseudo MMO. Some people call it a looter shooter. Where it functions a lot like a Halo or maybe even a Borderlands, but then you have a character and classes and the persistent world and group play of an MMORPG. It's been going since the first one came out in 2014. The sequel, this one, Destiny 2, has been out since 2017. And it's been running yearly or close to yearly expansions ever since. And for the most part, ever since the one that came out in like 2018, the game has been phenomenal. I think the only bad part about this game, in my opinion, over the course of the past 4 years or whatever it's been, has been the fact that it's progressively been harder for new players to jump in. Just because there's so much content and so much to it, and they keep adding more. We just had a bunch of new people in the Discord hop in and start playing it for the first time, or come back to it after a long break, and they're so unbelievably lost, and I'm just frantically running around being like, okay, it's like hurting toddlers. It's like, okay, no, don't do that. No, you don't go over there. Don't spend your money on that. It's but it's been a fun time seeing. Last night when we were doing that raid, which you're seeing my gameplay of it right here, or not even a raid, just a regular dungeon. This is a campaign dungeon, and the new campaign on the highest difficulty, legendary, every single dungeon feels like a freaking mini raid, and it's so good. But it's also so frustrating because you can spend 2 hours of your 3-hour stream on one boss. So
is that kind of what's going on here? We're spending that stream on this single boss.
Most of it. So we spent most of it on this, and then we ended up with too many people to do the campaign because the campaign is 3 players at a time, and we had 4. So what we ended up doing is going and hopping into Gambit, which that's actually a very unique mode for Destiny. It's called PvP PvE. So you have a PvE objective and you're fighting against the AI, and then every now and then you could invade the other team's board and kill them to screw up their progress.
Alrighty then.
It's super cool. I think it's one of the most underplayed and, in my opinion, under talked about and discussed parts of Destiny. I actually don't think Gambit gets nearly enough love for how cool it actually is. So
Cool. Carrion, you said you played a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I definitely get the feeling as a new player. So I played the original Destiny for like the week it came out. So I had some idea of what was going on, but I got back into it, just within the last week. I talked to some of my friends that played and said, okay, take me to school. What do I need to know? And I went through and oh man, I love the new glaive that came out with this expansion. This is
it's really good.
Yeah, it's exactly what it needed. And there's something just so wonderful about racing at somebody with the glaive and finishing them off in a nice up close and personal kind of way. So to me that was great, but yeah, the learning curve to get in now is pretty steep. I think if you have like 2 or 3 friends that'll, yeah, for lack of a better term, babysit you and take you through the first little bit until you learn where all the spreadsheets to fight the other spreadsheets come from, then I think you'd probably be in good shape. But if you don't have like a little bit of a community around you now, it'd be very difficult to enter and
Yes.
get good.
As one of the like people who's been like integrating new people into Destiny, I find that a good chunk of my time is like sitting down with them and just explaining shit. Like my roommate just started playing it yesterday, and she's super into it. She loves it. She says it has the she's a big Apex player, and she's like it has the gunplay of Apex, but the like loot and mechanics of a Diablo. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's awesome. And then like today, she's like, hey, how do you get off that first planet? And I'm just sitting there like, you hold the back button and click on where you want to go. Like it's just get like the menus and the fact that like for just one character, okay, you have your gear set, then you need to level all your masterwork gear. You need to get the exotics you want for whatever build you're doing. You need to know what build you're doing. You need to get proper mods for whatever whatever activity you're into, PvE, PvP, raids, etc. And then like realistically, to have the best possible time in this game, you need at least one other person with you, and preferably 2, because like it very much feels like this new campaign on the legendary difficulty is designed for this 3 people. Like we were doing that boss that you're seeing footage of now, where you start the boss fight, you kill his friend, and then burn him down to his second and third phase. And his second and third phase, you need someone to kite the boss around, distract him, while the 2 other guys run to each area, blow up the ads in the room, and then blow up that crystal that you're
What's an ad?
seeing. That is an enemy, like just a random enemy that's not the boss. Sometimes they're like mini bosses, like this one that we're shooting now on screen. Sorry for RIP audio listeners.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where if you're going in expecting just like a Borderlands or a normal shooter, there's a lot more to it, but there's also like it's a commitment. It's a definite commitment. What's here is really good. This is the most interesting expansion in a long time. We were all like geeking out about the intro to the campaign and the new guns, the new mechanics, but it's also, and the glaive, like you said, but we're also very much like having to kind of babysit Ray and now Stephanie and be like, all right, hey, this is how this game actually works. Oh, hey, look, I turned into Captain America here, but screwed up and missed my throw.
So you guys are playing it on the hardest difficulty. Would you say that this game is at all, I mean, you said there's a lot of mechanics to learn, but does it at all come off as casual friendly?
It can. I think the campaign on normal is casual friendly. It's just the rewards for doing it on legendary are so good that our entire group was like, forget that, let's and then like even midway through I was just like, dude, I don't know, we might have to switch over to normal. And Ray's like, okay, but like, do you really want the game to win? And I'm like, yeah, you're right, screw that, let's go. You know, like that was the mindset of the whole group. And this boss, we actually figured out a way to kite it super easy. Kiting is where you just lead the boss around. If you go on top of the statue that's in the middle of the room, whoever is kiting it will not have trouble kiting at all. Like they just have to dodge his like big fire throw thing. Yeah, like it's casual friendly in the sense that like the base campaign is really easy to pick up and learn, and it's a very standard Halo-esque shooting experience. And the guns feel really good. Like this is one of the best feeling shooters from movement and like the pew pews. You know, you have really cool powers. Like once again, see, I'm purple Captain America basically. Like that's awesome. It's super good time. They just updated the talent trees for 2 of the specs, so like you have more options. You know, the hard part for casuals though is like wrapping your head around like, okay, I need to get all the mods for all my weapons. What is this glimmer thing for, and where do I spend it? Like that was a bit like Ray capped out his money yesterday, and he didn't know what to spend his money on. So anything he earned last night as far as money goes just was worthless to him. You know, and I'm like, well, you use it to buy bounties, which will give you reputation and better rewards so you can get better guns, as an example. You know, there's just a lot. It's very similar to a Lost Ark or a Final Fantasy or a World of Warcraft, where there's tons and tons and tons of systems. But if you don't have a friend to explain those, or you're like me, where you're just gonna probe every system and screw up constantly till you learn it, you know, you're gonna have a rough time like progressing
It'd
up
feel overwhelming.
Yeah, like you're gonna have trouble at the end game, not so much early game, because like I said, the campaign on the normal difficulty is a fairly standard shooter, but with superpowers and loot. Like if you've played Borderlands, you'd feel right at home. But on Legendary, get friends and be ready. Like I don't know what else to tell everyone. Like I got texted from my friend Laura who plays, and she's like, "How far did you guys get last night?" We're like level 4 out of 19. Like 4 out of 19. I'm like, yeah, no, dude, and 3 of that was on 1 level. So, yeah.
Yeah, the computer, like the AI on Legendary, does not play fair. It's just it punishes the weak.
It punishes also lack of coordination. Like we really had to like sync up. Like we're like, okay, like Ray, you take left side, I'll take right, and we'll alternate pulling the mini bosses back and forth, and just like all this kind of stuff. And then like we finally set up a strategy to beat it. And we're like, okay, in phase 2 they're gonna spawn those melee guys that 1-hit kills. So Ray, save your rocket ammo for that. We'll drop rocket ammo on those. And this is just a campaign boss. This isn't even a raid fight. Or like a hard mode dungeon, which is like a Nightfall dungeon or Nightfall Strike. That's what they call their like really hard mode for dungeons. Like this is literally just a campaign dungeon, and I love it because I like that kind of mechanics in MMOs. That's what I'm all about. I'm all about the sweaty raid mechanics. Like that's why I did heroic raids in World of Warcraft. That's why right now I'm leveling in Final Fantasy, and I'm already telling like people in my guild, all right, I'm gonna gear and start doing ultimates the second I cap. Be ready. So like if you're like that, this campaign is perfect for you. Like my friend David's like that. He finished the campaign in 2 days on Legendary by himself.
Wow.
Yeah, no, he's incredible at that game. I literally in our Discord, we have a side Discord from the channel for the Destiny players, just because we don't want to annoy the whole MMO channel. And what we did with it is like I literally sang the part of that Tenacious D song for David, where I'm just like, "Can't you see he's the man? Let me hear you applaud. He is more than a man. He's a shining golden god." For him, and like that, because that's the only way to describe that. Like, dude, like that campaign. Once again, it's ridiculous. So, have you been playing on Legendary?
Yeah. No. The team that I hooked in with, my group of friends, we play on the most challenging difficulty of whatever game it is, period. There is no other difficulty as far as we're concerned.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how we operate. That if we're not playing it on the AI is an evil, cheating, miserable so and so, then we're not doing the game right.
Yeah, no. If you're not getting big sweaty, then don't play. That's the rule. Like that's that's
If you're not
actually
miserable, you're not having fun.
yeah, exactly. Well, no, because it's like it's that Dark Souls mentality. Like Elden Ring just came out this week. Unfortunately, I can't afford to pick it up because I've bought too many games this month, like way too many. But like Elden Ring just came out, and those Dark Souls games are like this, where just like the feeling you get when you beat this like what feels like a freaking impossible task is so good. It is better than anything in video games, especially when you in a game like this where you coordinate to do it and just everyone is stoked. I've been playing MMOs since I was like 13. And I remember back the first time in World of Warcraft when we cleared Molten Core and Ragnaros goes down and you have 40 people on Ventrilo cheering that we just did this really cool hard thing. Like it's just magic. It's video game magic is what it is. And this game has that, and it's always had it, but it's like Witch Queen is just another step up. Between the weapon crafting system, that's so awesome. We have one guy in our Discord who has crafted every weapon except the bow, and he's like a big fan of bows and arrows in that game. And he's like, they knew I'd be too powerful if I had it.
So humble.
But go ahead, sorry.
I was just remarking, so humble. But I do have a question. If you were trying to get somebody who might kind of be a little bit hesitant, new player curiosity, how are you going to try and how would you want to get a new player into this game? What advice would you have for a new player?
New player into Destiny. Find some friends who play, or go on the there are a lot of Destiny communities out there. They're really popular. If you just go into one of the Destiny community Discords, you can find a Sherpa for almost anything. What that is the Destiny community has people who literally his whole goal is to run new lights. That's what they call new players, new lights. Veteran players are guardians, who are beings revived by the light. That's a lore thing. To run new lights through content and get them to experience content for the first time. So then eventually that person can become a Sherpa, and the community can grow and have plenty of people in it. Because this game is best enjoyed with people. It just is. It's part of the reason why everyone I know who likes shooters or MMOs, for the most part, I try and get them to play. If you're kind of more there for the story, it does have a great story, but it's not entirely told through the game itself, unfortunately. For example, I love the lore, but that's because I've bought those 4 Grimoire books and read the comics on their website, and I get a lot of auxiliary stuff. But yeah, have a friend come in and show you the ropes. I'm gonna be obviously, if you're new, go through the tutorial, get off the planet, get into the tower, and then your friend can come and be like, okay, this is the campaign, this is PvP, this is Gambit. Okay, you've leveled enough, you've made enough progress, we can take you into a raid and just give you simple instructions. Because the raids in Destiny 2 are very communication heavy. There are literal raids I don't think you can really do without a microphone unless you guys have been doing it forever and are really coordinated. It's just not going to happen. There's this mechanic from the one we streamed 2 weeks ago where there are these lights, these boxes of light that spawn in a particular order, and 3 of your team's in one dimension and the other one's in another dimension, and you need to tell them what order they spawned in: A, B, C, D, E, F, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however you want to label it. And if the people in the other dimension do it in the wrong order, or you tell them the wrong thing, everyone instantly dies.
So, as
stuff like that.
Yeah. So, as a veteran MMO player, where do you rank this? I mean, you obviously used to hold World of Warcraft. I mean, that you still admit is your favorite, correct?
Yeah, WoW is honestly still my favorite. Current World of Warcraft is not, but in general, throughout its history. Like it's in the upper half, like upper middle. It's in my top 3 probably even. It's just that if you're kind of there for narrative, or don't have friends to play with, it's going to be a hard time because the game doesn't have built-in social structures to meet new people easily. It's not like WoW where I can just go into trade chat and be like, "Yo, what up, homies? Who needs a tank?" And like I get 20 messages because I'm the one tank on the server at that particular moment. You know, like, or it's not like Final Fantasy where you can go into novice chat if you're a new player and just say, because the way Final Fantasy does new players is you get a little sprout next to your name to show everyone that you're a new player, so people aren't going to be a dick to you. And like you'll get a lot of help from the community and stuff like that. And Destiny doesn't have that. Destiny just kind of throws you in and says, "Hope you have friends or you figure it out. Good luck, buddy." And it's like that's kind of my only real problem with that and the lack of narrative. It's kind of my opposite problem with Final Fantasy, where Final Fantasy doesn't give you a ton of gameplay until you're like 15 levels in, and it's just, I hope you like story, bro, because you're going to be getting a lot of it. Like, here, enjoy this visual novel.
So definitely good for those that want to get into story lore.
Yeah, like if you are a fan of story, like Final Fantasy is your MMO. Like it's playing dress up and story. That's what that game is. That's actually why I keep recommending it to you so hard. I'm just like, you're a writer, and this game has tons of dress up, which I know you love. Here, play it.
I'll probably try it again at a later time. For some reason that initial play attempt, I just didn't capture me. But I mean, I'm not opposed to trying. I'm not an MMO. Yeah, I do play some, so I'm not an MMO noob by any means. But yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and transition to our final closing thoughts, weekend plans. Carry on. What do you got planned for the weekend, or what thoughts do you just want to end on tonight?
Well, this weekend I'm actually getting set up on doing a fair bit more writing. I'm actually for Doomcock's channel. I am doing a D&D module, like an old school D&D module, Escape from Xanadu. The general idea of the module is you've been kidnapped by the villain Dictor Van Doomcock and have to escape his underground realm in order to survive and run into all the various characters and what have you that he's introduced along the way. So I'm getting a chance to do a fair bit of the writing on that, and it's been neat because I've been able to coordinate with a lot of the lore from some of the people that we've collected over the years, and I'm getting a chance to finally compile a lot of that into the game mechanics now. So wow. I'm planning on doing a fair bit of writing on that. If I get very lucky, I'll have enough time to continue on with the new hobby I've picked up, which is 3D printing. I'm doing a lot of resin printing right now, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. So I think that's my weekend pretty tied up there.
I'll have to hit you up for a TOS phaser or something like that sometime.
John, I have the TOS tricorder actually ready to go.
Nice. Scale?
Yeah.
Nice.
Show accurate.
That is, yeah. I think I saw that. I think that was a limited release, if I'm remembering correctly. But that's awesome. We'll have to showcase some of that stuff on another episode. John, what you got? Closing thoughts, closing plans for the weekend, closing stuff you'll be doing, games you'll be trying.
I definitely want to thank our guests. Super appreciative of you guys taking the time to join our brand new podcast and get to showcase some information on games that, like, for me, I haven't played Destiny in forever, and that conversation really made me think about it. Like, maybe I've been thinking about it the wrong way. So I really appreciate you gentlemen coming on, talking with us. For me, what I will be doing this week, I'm downloading Elden Ring. I already downloaded it, pre-ordered. I'm ready for it to drop tonight around 10 o'clock, hopefully, if it follows the Eastern clock. I'm excited. It's going to be fun. Other than that, yeah, pretty much Elden Ring all
game
weekend.
Looks awesome. Game looks so awesome.
So pretty. 2 videos I watched on it by Game Ranks. Shout out to Game Ranks. Like, oh man, it was good. Looks like a lot of fun.
Bronson, final thoughts?
You know, just, yeah, as far as plans go, it's basically Destiny and Final Fantasy till the rails fall off, you know. And then on Sunday morning we got the podcast, Video game news, video game reviews, and 10:30 in the morning Pacific.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Right on.
Your
Right
podcast.
on. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking out the next episode of Severance as soon as it's available. And probably, despite my thoughts on it last week, I'm probably going to be hitting some more Lost Ark this weekend. And it's, there's lots of things I hope it improves on, and we're definitely going to do a follow-up segment in a couple months. But I still, for what I've been playing on it, I really enjoy it a lot. Otherwise, yeah, to say what John said, thank you guys so much for coming on. This means a lot to us, and we definitely want to have you all on future podcasts or whenever y'all want to be here. I mean, we got plenty of room and plenty of time to talk about everything that's going on. So I think maybe we'll probably just close out a little early. Nothing wrong. We don't have to be exactly 2 hours long, but definitely don't like to go over when I can avoid it. Unless anyone's want to take up the last 4 minutes to tell the world what you think matters or something.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to both of you guys for having me on today. I really appreciate it. You guys have been wonderful hosts, and you guys, you guys deserve a lot more credit than you guys have accrued so far. So hopefully, more people, like the stream and share it out, and let's get you guys the credit. You guys are very, very well earned.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
I appreciate it a lot.
That really does. He's probably crying, but he does. I'm on camera, so I have to be the man in the room. No emotions.
And now we know
Only
what
happy things. You're insecure. Shut up.
No,
Anyway.
dude, you just push it down, just all the way down.
And then you pour scotch over it until it's all.
Oh, went too far down. Gotta go use the
Have
restroom.
your feelings out loud.
Anyway, to make a poopy joke. Anyway, Bronson, we got 3 minutes left. What you got?
I don't got really much, man. Just like we got our stream tomorrow at 8 p.m. where we're reviewing Peacemaker. I know you guys did that last week. Nothing shocking. I have good things to say about it as I have the entire 8 weeks that it ran. Probably my favorite superhero show besides maybe Loki.
Really?
And yeah, I love Peacemaker. It was great. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It was fun. Sorry I was late. I had dinner with I had dinner with the roommate scheduled, and that shit ran way longer than we thought it would. So, yeah.
No, I totally, I would definitely be late to your show if I had In-N-Out in my neighborhood. Absolutely worth it. So,
yeah, we have 3 now.
Must be nice. Could you, you wouldn't mind going to put one on a truck and send it up here for us? That'd be great.
It just molds over the 2 days it's traveling. Just here's your burger, because.
No, I meant bring the restaurant. Well, with that, I think we've said all we've been wanting to say today. So I'll just finish out by saying thank you for watching today or listening on a follow-on time. We're definitely not hurt if you don't watch us live. But we're here every Thursday at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. My name is Petey York, reminding you always, do not be a penis.
Obligatory like and subscribe remark.
Oh shit, that's right. Obligatory like and subscribe!